Good evening, Des Moines. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program here on webcast1live.com and docandlefty.com, coming to you every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 from beautiful downtown Des Moines, Iowa, bringing you the perspectives you love from the sides you hate. And I am down my partner in crime. I'm down the BMOPC, the big man or psychiatrist on campus, but Doc is out on vacation for the foreseeable future if we let him back into the studio. But never fear, we have our resident guest host, my good buddy, your good buddy, Phaedra Strohmaier is with us again tonight. She was here. When was the last time you were here? It was a few weeks-ish? Whenever
sure.
We'll
go with a couple weeks.
He gives me so much grief for never being prepared for anything. Right? I'm the anti-Boy Scout. I don't know what that would make me. Some kind of whatever the opposite of a Boy Scout would be. It's not Girl Scout, folks, and that's a good segue into what we're going to be talking about in about a half hour. And by
you
good
said
segue,
it, so I don't have to.
And by good segue, I mean preemptive segue. And we're going to talk about preemption here too on the show. We got a lot of things to talk about. Phaedra, I got just a really weird sense of what's going on in the world, and what by weird sense I mean I'm kind of irritated by what's been going on in the world. So we're going to talk about
well, that's good. It means you're paying attention.
Well, yeah, but see, here's the problem with that. You're paying attention, you get irritated. It feels like what's the point? You know, why not pay attention to cat videos and other things that make people less irritated?
Well, how irritated do you have to be to start doing something about it?
That's well, you know, I don't know. So
clearly more irritated than you are.
That's possibly true. That's possibly true. But we're going to talk about the military actions that are going on in Iraq and Syria. Now, Doc and I talked a little bit about it last week, but it had really only just started. We've got a full week of it now without any action from Congress. We talk about that. We're going to talk about this weird campaign from the Republican Party that just kicked off called Republicans Are People Too. Okay, fine. Well, you know, that's up for debate. But also, then later in the hour, we're going to be talking about some more women's stuff, because it just, you know, the ladies are just not going away, guys. They got issues, and we got to talk about them, I guess. No, that's a joke. It just there's things that have been on my mind about the recent Emma Watson UN speech, the criticism that she's received, the threats, and the really awful stuff that happened.
Isn't that weird?
Well, it's very weird, but it's just disgusting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and some of the reaction to it. And also, I guess California, which I knew about the ballot measure. I did not know that it passed. Phaedra,
so I hear.
Yes. You want to tell us a little bit about that before we go to a break?
Sure. California has just finally become, I believe, the first state in the union to enact what are they calling it? An affirmative consent measure?
Yes means yes, I think.
Basically, that's the concept. Basically, that you can't, in order to consent to having sexual relations with someone else, you have to affirm that, yes, you are consenting. You can't, as previously thought, apparently, you can't say, oh, well, you know, she was drunk, so...
Right.
You know, she was passed out, so she didn't have a chance to say yes. So we're going to assume that she consented. No, you can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. So we'll get
into that a little bit later, because we're going to lump all that stuff together. And if time permits, and if her stuff gets taken care of, a friend of mine is going to be calling in to the show a little later. She had another commitment. She's going to be on here to talk about the Iowa Women's Leadership Conference that kicks off, I believe, on October 17th. I'll confirm that after we take this break here in a couple minutes. But she's a volunteer and working on the Iowa Leadership Conference that's bringing in some folks from around the country to, I guess, talk about leadership and women's role in leadership, and the important role that women play right now and need to continue to play on into the future, as we look at, particularly in the near term, a potential senator. First senator who's a woman from Iowa, first congressperson perhaps from Iowa who's a woman. And so that's pretty relevant as far as I'm concerned. We'll be talking a little bit about that. But the big news, at least local to this studio, is that you have started grad school.
Yes, I have.
And you're familiar with the show. We like to, Doc and I kind of do this mental throat clearing. And so what are you doing grad school wise?
I'm pursuing my master's in business administration.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Through Drake here, or
no, actually, through an accredited institution.
Oh my! Oh my! Shots fired at my law alma mater. You know, it is weird. It is weird, and I'll tell you what's weird. My diploma was printed on tissue paper. I don't know if that makes it less than a real thing, but through
the University of Iowa, actually.
Oh, right on.
And if I can plug them a little bit, the University of Iowa has an extension program that I believe is rated number 31 in the nation for.
You can always plug the
programs.
University of Iowa. My first love is I got a lot of grief for that comment about the Hawkeyes being a surprise 4-1. Now.
Sorry, that was a surprise.
It was, right, and a buddy of mine said that they should be 5-0, and of course they should. We should always beat the Cyclones because the Cyclones are terrible all the time. Throughout history, definitionally garbage. Definitionally.
You know, much as I would love to agree with you publicly, my boss is a huge Cyclone fan, so
take no position.
I will. I'm going to just
fine.
let
Take
it
no
sit there.
position. You know, you should pick a side, though. We are at war. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break here and get back into the war that we are in Iraq, Syria, the non-existent border between the two. And so please, you should be checking out our sponsors, Bertrosh & Associates. That's Doc's outfit, my outfit, Labinas Law Firm. We have Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia PC. You can give them a call at 515-574-6442 for all of your surgical anesthetic needs, or maybe non-surgical anesthetic needs, whatever those might be. We also want to do Facebook, Twitter, DocLefty.com. And check out Two Birds Creative. They do a lot of this kind of stuff for us, and we really do appreciate Phaedra being with us today. So check us out after the break. We'll be right back.
How can I help you?
Bertrosh & Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. So the first time I want to get into today is that we've got military. If you hadn't heard, we've got military action in Iraq and Syria, going back into Iraq for, the third time in the last 20 years, the fourth time. We've been there a lot, is basically the point. And now we're flying airstrikes into Syria. We're hearing from retired generals saying there needs to be ground troops. We're hearing active generals are saying we're training ground troops with the Kurdish Peshmerga, with friendly forces in Syria, what they call the vetted moderate opposition in Syria, whatever that means, and trying to stitch back together the relevant parts of the Iraqi army, which has been an unmitigated disaster for most of this action with the, I guess, supervillain terrorist group du jour, ISIS, or the Islamic State, whatever you want to call them. Have you been following this? I mean, you can't not follow it, but
much as I would like to not follow it, because all it does is piss me off.
Yeah.
I will admit I've mostly been trying to focus on school right now,
Sure.
so I'm getting my news from a lot of awkward sources, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Comedy shows, that kind of thing.
Fair
The
enough.
Daily Show, for instance.
So we have a caller here, and I need to get my cans on. So what I'll tell you what it really irritates me the most about this whole thing is we have really no congressional leadership on this issue whatsoever, and I'm going to do the very unprofessional thing. And if you could reach those to me across the table, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And okay, so we have no congressional leadership, but we'll get back to that here in a second because we got a caller. This is Doc and Lefty. Who am I talking to?
You're talking to Frank.
Hey, Frank, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, pretty good.
How's it going? What's on your mind?
Oh, you was talking about congressional leadership on ISIS?
Yeah.
Well, these guys, according to Pat Buchanan, in his book, it's been several years ago, 2004, 2005, those guys abdicated the leadership on that stuff to the president because they don't want to take a tough vote on nothing because they're too worried about their constituency in the ballot box and getting voted in office. So, you know, they let the Senate, they let the Supreme Court make the laws.
Yep.
They let the president dictate our trade policy. And, you know, they was about to let Obama coin money.
Sure. Well, Frank, I guess the issue that I have, especially with this Iraq-Syria thing and going after ISIS, the president is using and I believe this is Frank in Des Moines, buddies with our good friend Ed Fallon from the Fallon Forum, correct?
Yes, my good friend out.
Your good friend. I think that you and I have probably squared off before, and what I'm really irritated about the most of this Iraq thing, Frank, is this is the exact what the Obama administration is doing today. A Democratic administration that was elected on an anti-war platform in 2008 is using the Bush administration authorization for the use of military force that was to go after the perpetrators of 9/11 in Iraq and Syria. This is the exact problem that people were warning about, but I guess have conveniently forgotten now that Democrats in the White House.
Our Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Absolutely.
He has bashed Bush in the face for 6 years on the Iraq policy, and then he's got the gall to go into ISIS based on a 2001 resolution to go into Iraq and a 2000 resolution to go into Afghanistan.
That was sponsored by the Bush administration, passed overwhelmingly in the Congress, and now being bootstrapped to authorize this new action. And it's just another example of the Congress delegating just crazy authority to the executive branch that they've been doing since the early 80s.
And won't call it war.
Won't call it war.
Wants to tap around and say he's complying with the War Powers Act.
Well, now, Frank, let me ask you this question. What do you think about the War Powers Act? Because in my opinion, it's probably unconstitutional.
Yes, it probably is. Congress needs to declare war.
Absolutely.
They need, if we're ever going to have a war in this country, since we put one on in World War II and have our country support it,
yep,
and have people sacrifice, like they did in World War II, we're going to have the Congress declare war no matter what it costs them at the ballot box.
That's Frank, I couldn't agree with you more. And this is a more liberal-minded person, a more conservative-minded person, finding some common ground, which is really what we'd like to do on this show, although it may not be quite as fun. But I mean, it's absolutely disgusting to me. Phaedra, do you have any thoughts on this?
I really don't. I'm kind of just as pissed at this as you are, actually.
Yeah.
Everything that I know suggests to me that this isn't something we should be doing at all.
Yep.
Not to mention that I've got a lot of friends in the military, and I'd really just assume that they stay home.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Frank, this is the Hobson's choice that we presented here is to act on behalf of the guy that was gassing people a year ago, or the folks that are cutting journalists' heads off. It feels to me like there's really no good way to win that one.
Well, apparently we're beating up Assad's enemy.
Yep.
And we go and Iran thinks we're going to go softer. Israel is saying they think we're going to go softer on nuclear negotiations with Iran because we're going. Iran and the United States is going to ally to take out ISIS.
Yep. It's just a complete mess, and we better stay out of it. This one. That's right.
Well, too late now.
Yeah, it is too late. And we've got generals talking about a multi-year commitment. It's just a complete. And hey, welcome to 2016, whoever the next president is.
Yeah.
It's just
okay. Well,
thanks for calling, Frank. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks, buddy. That was Frank in Des Moines talking about and sharing some thoughts. And I gotta tell you, it really is just a complete and total abrogation of duty from the Congress. And now that you know, we've got a conservative. It's really easy to throw mud at the Obama administration for this, and you don't hear a lot of neocons doing it because this is the war they want. They love the conservatives love the United States in a state of war. It's a policy to project strength around the world, is what they call it. But this intellectual dishonesty of saying that the legal authority that created the Afghanistan war and then the Iraq war in 2003 is going to allow us to recommit to Iraq after the Status Forces Agreement kicked us out at the end of the Bush administration, recommit to Iraq, and then through some tortured logic of, since the border between Syria and Iraq really doesn't exist, it's kind of the same conflict with the same people in the same area. And Congress...
So how actually, since you're the lawyer here, how actually legal is what they're doing? Are any laws actually being broken? Well,
it's hard to say because when it comes to armed conflict, and this is not a territory that I'm particularly well versed in as a lawyer, but give armed conflict, especially since Vietnam. Now, the War Powers Act was created during the Vietnam War because people were appalled at the latitude that LBJ and to a lesser extent Kennedy and LBJ and to a lesser extent Nixon were using with our troops in Vietnam. But the War Powers Act basically says that the Congress, or that the president has to give Congress a certain kind of notice and a certain amount of days whenever he engages military troops anywhere abroad.
Right.
And presidents since then have been saying it doesn't really apply to anything because we can do whatever we want.
Pretty sure that's not how it works.
Right, except there is this inherent conflict in the Constitution where the president, as the commander-in-chief, is the leader of the military, and the Congress is the body that declares war.
Right.
So what kind of check is there for the Congress to employ when the president comes and says, we have to act now, I'm the executive, I command the troops, you're not going to tell me that I can't send them someplace, which is not in Congress's power to do.
Okay.
It's a constitutional crisis every time the president does this, and they resolve it by doing nothing. There are plenty of Supreme Court cases that allow presidents to do this sort of thing that I'm not going to cite to you, but they are out there. But letter of the law, I don't know that any president has followed the exact letter of the War Powers Act when it comes to this sort of stuff, because all that it's a letter here, it's a hearing here, it's bringing Congress in to vote, and you hear the president on the one hand with Syria say we need congressional authorization to do this, and on the other hand say, well, Iraq, now we can just do whatever we want.
Right.
And so laws broken, hard to say. Probably, but but
can you prove it?
Right, but in wartime,
maybe it doesn't matter.
The law is whatever you say it is when there's this crisis, and you will have Republican politicians unwilling, even though their hatred for the Obama administration is pathological at this point, in my opinion. Unwilling to stand against a president and risk being seen as unpatriotic by their own people, and you'll have Democrats unwilling to stand against a Democratic president. It creates this situation where the Congress sits down, the Supreme Court, not having much of a role to play in this sort of stuff, is silent, and the executive does whatever they want. And not to sound super alarmist before we take a break, but if you want to set the stage for a despotic leader in this country, you will not do it with things like Obamacare and abortion. You will do it with granting unequivocal military power to a singular executive in a war-type crisis,
who commands by a wide margin the most powerful army on the planet.
Yep, that's it. Lots and lots of nukes. But anyway, we come to a break. We have a new sponsor for the show. It's the Libertarian. I believe it's declared on the Libertarian ticket.
Yes.
But at least the independent candidate for governor in this gubernatorial race. The Democrat being, of course, Jack Hatch, the Republican being Terry Branstad. Dr. Lee Heeb from Northern Iowa has been running on the Libertarian ticket, and she's been a guest on the show several times.
I think she's a super friend of the show, actually.
Three times. That's
so.
my arbitrary rule. She's a new sponsor to the show, and she's got some ads that we're going to run here, and we certainly do wish her the best in the general election. Met her a couple times. A fascinating woman with fascinating views, and someone who I definitely enjoy talking to. Given her, and you've been on the show when she's here, correct?
I was, yeah.
I'm
very impressed, actually.
So take a look at her stuff. Contribute if you feel like it. If go to her website and be sure to vote for whoever your conscience dictates here on Election Day in November. But we'll be right back with more Doc Lefty. Thanks.
I'm Lee Heeb. I'm candidate for Iowa governor. Some of you don't know what a libertarian is, and you think we're kind of crazy and that we wear these things on our head. You know what's crazy? It's crazy to continue to vote for the two big parties who for years have taken special interest funds, have taken that money, have legislated in favor of their special interest buddies at the expense of all of us. You've heard of the great right-wing conspiracy. Let me tell you the great libertarian conspiracy. We want to take over government, shrink government, and leave you alone. When it comes to economic growth, the answer is really not that complicated. If you look around the country, the states that are doing well have no income tax and are deregulated. We, on the other hand, have one of the highest personal income taxes. We have the very top corporate tax in the nation, and we're regulated to death. Did you know that raw milk is outlawed in the state of Iowa? Really, raw milk? I mean, first of all, we're the heartland of rural agriculture. But here's the important point. Will a state who doesn't trust you to choose your milk trust you with buying a weapon? Will a state that doesn't trust you with raw milk trust you to choose your own health care? Will a state that won't trust you with raw milk trust you to educate your children? Am I truly free if I can't decide what to eat, what to drink, as long as I'm not harming another person? As a Navy officer, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. Now there's a part of the Constitution that says, shall not be infringed. It's the Second Amendment. I have a concealed carry permit, but really, why do I need one? I have the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, our right to carry firearms, is what supports all the other Bill of Rights. In November, have the courage to vote differently. Think about being more attached to your liberty and less attached to your political party.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around through this first half hour. Certainly do thank our friend Frank for calling in the first segment about ISIS and our response there, too. We're going to move along to something else that's been kind of on my mind in the national discourse, at least, is Emma Watson a few weeks ago. I'm not sure of the exact date, but it doesn't matter. You guys have computers, you can look that up. A few weeks ago gave a speech at the UN about a new campaign. She's the Goodwill Ambassador for Women, which sounds like a very lofty, grand title.
It does.
I'm not so certain I know what that means.
I don't think I do either, but I think there's something probably very indicative about the fact that women get our own ambassador to the UN.
That's a good point. I guess when every single other country is being run by a man, except with the exception of Germany and gosh, who's the? But
we have Emma Watson, so it's okay.
The rest, actually,
seriously, I'm good with that.
52% of the world has Emma Watson. Which is fine. She's pretty great. But she gave a speech that was. I read through the transcript, and there's nothing really offensive about this speech whatsoever. Mm-hmm. She's kicking off this new campaign called He for She, which seems like its central goal seems to be bringing along at the same time, projects for the bringing up equality for women, but helping bring along men and boys to join in the struggle for gender equality throughout the world. And that certainly is a lofty enterprise and something that is pretty admirable in my opinion, because one of the knocks on feminism has been for years and years that, well, it's pitting men against women, and if you want real gender equality or what have you, then they need to work as a team. And one of the really just kind of smarmy, difficult thoughts that the more liberal-minded, liberal college-esque men that we went to school with back in the day is that I heard a lot in my English and philosophy classes at the University of Iowa in Iowa City, was this business of, well, men get a lot of mistreatment from women, and it's not really women's issues, it should be human issues. And when you talk about bringing women up, it's always going to be at the expense of tearing men down, and that's not right, and that's not equality, therefore your whole movement is garbage.
I agree with your premise. Your conclusion is faulty.
Well, right? It's a ridiculous mindset in this country from a lot of people. And so as it relates to this speech, Emma Watson delivers this speech to the UN, something that gosh, I don't know that Leo DiCaprio got so much heat for what he did on climate change. And
he's a man, so of course.
Well, and he's adorable. Emma Watson is what I don't want to make. I get ironically sexist about stuff like this because it just makes me so crazy. She delivers this speech. There's nothing really in it that's down with men, grab the pitchforks and the torches, because that's not what feminism is about. That's never been what feminism is about. You'll see trolls everywhere, but she is immediately criticized for it. Immediately the victim of just really disgusting internet. I don't know if you saw some of
I saw some of them, and I declined to look at any more after I got a little bit horrified. And there was, to me, that's just such a weird reaction to have, to go and, here's this person who you don't know, who's making relatively generic claims about a subject that you may or may not be familiar with, but chances are a woman.
Chances are.
Odds are good, statistically
and
speaking,
like
if nothing else.
A couple.
Yeah, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But here's this person who's talking, and to somehow go from she's talking about something that might or might not interest or affect me to I'm going to make death threats against this person for something that she said that might or might not have actually offended me. I'm going to threaten to, I'm going to suggest that she should be raped and murdered and all these other horrible things. I don't even understand how you get to that point.
It's the most sort of sophomoric kind of attitude about anything, and you see it. You don't know how old these guys are, and it's got to be guys, right? You don't troll your own with something like that. If women who would say something like that, it doesn't make sense. It's got to be guys. I'm just trying not to make generalizations here, and probably young men who with not a lot of brains. And but the one that caught my eye and caught my attention the strongest because of as you said, it's the weirdest reaction. Someone says, I've got nude photographs of Emma Watson that if she doesn't stop talking about feminism as a thing, we're going to release them to the internet and woe befall anybody woe befall her and her entire movement. And that's not, obviously that was a bluff. That would have happened by now, I would assume.
I would think if nothing else, if you had those photos, why wouldn't you have released them with all of the other celebrity photos that came out like 2 weeks before?
Right, but it might have been a different person. Who knows?
Well, could have been. But two, that doesn't even make any sense. I can't get to that.
What is it about because I often have these conversations with friends of mine and my family. It's like I don't know. I personally, in my career so far, have not represented someone accused of sexual assault. I've represented somebody who had been found guilty of a sexual assault several years ago and was being tried on a different charge, but I have never defended someone on trial for a sexual assault against anybody, be it man or a woman. And so I don't have personal experience in talking to anybody like that in that kind of context, but I don't understand the rational, it's because it comes from a rational place. And not rational isn't justified through reason. I'm not saying that, but it comes from a rational place in that there is a thought process that is going from premise to conclusion in a deductive sort of way, right?
I believe that's correct.
You say this. This you'll say this, I want to be shocking or offensive. This is how to do it. Therefore, this reaction. But I don't understand what the connection. But it's a I guess a form of sexual torture. Well, torture is maybe too strong a word for something like this, but it's definitely sexually aggressive, definitely threatening. I don't understand it. What is it about the male, the juvenile, not by attitude, not age? I've met some very mature young boys, but juvenile male brain that kind of makes that jump. Do you have any insight into that?
The only thing that I can necessarily put to this that makes it make any sense is that if you have nude photographs of anybody, if you have really any human in the nude at all, then that person is also naked in a sense of vulnerable. They're exposed. Yes, they're not wearing clothes, but there's nothing to hide behind. It puts them in a submissive sort of position to you, or a subjugative posture to you, because here you are holding this naked photo. Ostensibly, you, the juvenile male that probably totally didn't have these at all, now have power over Emma Watson, this movie star who's talking to the UN about women's issues. And I think it's a power play. Well, but it's not a very good power play.
It's the worst kind of. It's the stupidest kind of power. But first of all, Emma Watson doesn't care about the nude photos that you may or may not have. She doesn't care. I promise you, she doesn't. And you know why? Because she's talking to the UN. And you're sitting at a computer tearing your hair out wondering how to get attention from somebody. So you make a good point. It feels like ownership to me. It feels like, especially because you're never going, unless you are the kind of psycho that you see in police procedurals who's able to kidnap a movie star and do something personally to her. The thing that demonstrates your power is an actual object that you have possession of, that you have some kind of claim to ownership to, or else you maybe wouldn't have it, and by trying to equate the idea to the object, turning it into sort of an artifact that can be owned, passed around, and is not possessed or owned by Emma Watson herself. So that to me is giving these guys too much credit for. It's going a little bit too metaphysical for my taste, because it just seems like this knee-jerk reaction that, hey man, I'm going to screw with anything that offends me personally. But how serious do you think it actually was? Because this...
To whom?
Well, I'll tell... that's a good question. One reaction that I've seen a lot by a lot of, even by women whose opinions I respect about this sort of thing, are saying, look, we can't... the outrage machine of the internet is this depth, wide and deep pool of crazy that we don't always have to employ against everything all the time for, Bill Maher made this point in a different way, but for Jonah Hill's homophobic slurs, or Alec Baldwin in that regard, or anything that's or that's misogynistic feminist, because that just it feeds the kind of attention monster that these people are. It gives them a platform and does put them on the same level to a certain degree, in the same way that punching down at a candidate at a debate would for an incumbent versus a no-name. It gives them a profile. So do these kinds of things need to be as vocally and publicly squashed as they usually are by people commenting on culture on the internet? Do you think?
I don't know if it matters whether they need to be, because I think they're going to be anyway.
Okay.
I think that's kind of what the internet does now.
We will react with a ham. Everything is a nail now. Is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
From an internet perspective, at least, if you look at the internet contributions, the loosely defined, obviously, as contributions to the internet, but if you consider what people talk about, it is so easy for the smallest thing to just blow up and go crazy.
Right.
Oh God, like those stupid videos a few years ago, like the kid that was all high on dental gas or whatever,
right,
all of that kind
right.
of stuff. The way that the internet works is immediate, but very, very fast. Like it's extremely short-lived. Blink and it's gone. And because of that, I think we have to react like that, because you're getting everybody's gut reaction immediately right now, and 5 minutes later, nobody cares.
Unless it's nude photographs of Jennifer Lawrence or potentially Emma Watson.
Okay, fine. Then we might care for like 3 days.
Yeah. Well, I take your point, I guess. So that's one half of the court. The other half, whether we should, but whether it's important to. Now, all aspects or all incidences of misogyny or racial hatred or homophobia or anything like that, that because it has in the past and will again, probably as long as there are human beings, resulted in horrific violence, which is never tolerable in any context ever. But so I'm a 12-year-old who says something like this on the internet or makes this high-profile kind of threat. I don't mean it because I'm an idiot, right?
Because you're 12.
Because I'm 12 and I'm an idiot. I'm not excusing it. If I was the 12-year-old's parent, I would do something punitive towards that child. But how seriously should we take those kinds of things on the internet? Now, they are persistent. They are pervasive everywhere. They get everywhere really, really, like you said, really, really quickly. But would you feel more uncomfortable if someone called you on the phone that you didn't know and had your number and called you and said, I'm going to do something terrible to you, like made a threat to you or whatever? Or if it was on Twitter, retweeting something you said and said the exact same thing, which would make you more uncomfortable?
I would actually feel more uncomfortable about the phone call.
The phone, right.
Partly because I have an unlisted number, but that's me.
Right.
Say for a minute that I don't.
Exactly.
But my number's out there. Somehow that calling somebody on the phone and threatening them, or speaking to them in person and threatening them, or really anything like that, is way different than posting something on the internet, which we've all seen is for everyone. You cannot put something anywhere on the internet and expect it to be private. So there is clearly no way that you can send some kind of, Twitter private message or whatever.
Right.
And expect it to not get out.
You're
doing it because you want it public.
Right. It's not private, but it's anonymous.
Well, true. But the phone call could also be anonymous.
Fair enough.
I mean, given sufficient resources,
right.
Could I trace your number if you're the idiot 12-year-old calling me making threats? Yes, I could. Would I bother? Maybe not. Depends on what you said.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I'm certainly not going after some idiot on Twitter.
How does your experience as a woman inform that attitude? Or does it at all? Maybe it doesn't.
I don't know that I can really answer that.
Well, and I asked that question because, and we're going to go to a break here. And we're going to keep talking about this topic and add some other things in here. But I bring that up because as a man myself, I mean I've been threatened physically before because I've been in fights before. That is not uncommon to my experience as a person. It doesn't matter if I was a man or not. I would think, I don't know, but I have never been the recipient ever of anything approaching like a sexual threat or something of that nature. That is, we treat in our society, we seem to treat those as more serious, or even a death threat as more worrisome than they should be, right? But so as I feel fairly secure all the time because I'm a man. I kind of there's a weird quasi entitlement that a lot of men feel that, well, we're not going to ever have to face this, and so we don't think too much about it. But And so that's why I asked the question, does your experience as a woman inform your response to different kinds of threatening situations? Or
I can say personally that there are an awful lot of steps that I will take to ensure my own safety and more to ensure that I don't become the target of threats or violence or sexual assault or things of that nature that probably don't ever cross your mind. For instance, I mentioned I'm taking classes. My class gets done at 9:30 at night. It's now dark. I have to walk, depending on the night, 3 blocks in downtown Des Moines. I'm lucky Des Moines is a pretty safe place, so I'm not really concerned about it. But you bet, absolutely every night I'm not on my phone. I wait until I get in the car if I need to make a call or something like that. I am walking head up, looking around. I occasionally do the thing where you thread your keys through your hands, although I understand that's not really terribly helpful.
You can hurt your hand pretty bad. Is what I hear.
That's exactly. So there are all of these things that I do, and I have to think about it. Like, okay, what would I do? Who's around? Who's going to be, who's potentially a target? Who's just walking their dog, jogging by the sculpture park, and who's, looking alone and shifty? And do I have to walk past any dark alleys?
Right.
There are those kind of things that probably you don't have to do, and I would guess the threats are the same kind of thing, but I've never had those.
Fair point. We're going to get back to more of this after a break here. We're with my good friend Phaedra Strohmaier, who's filling in for the dearly vacationing Dr. Pat Petrosh. This is Doc and Lefty. Please visit our sponsors, Doc and Levinas Law Firm, Petrosh Associates, Des Moines Anesthesia, Dr. Lee Heeb, Halo Capital. Check out Facebook, Twitter for all kinds of good thoughts and murmurings from the show. Also, docandlefty.com. We will be right back after this break.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere. See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care. Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com.
Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. If you're just joining us, we're with my special guest co-host. Probably, I don't know what your title would be. Maybe a guest host emeritus or something. That implies some kind of retired status. You can be the of council guest or something. We bring you into back cleanup when Doc is taking a vacation day, which he just seems that, he I'll tell you what, he gives you so much grief, but he's the guy that misses more time on the show than I do. I will say that. So, Doc, if you're tuning in from your undisclosed location, my sweat equity is building, partner. So we look forward to see you next week, especially when we start breaking down some of the election stuff, because we are just a little over 30 days away from the midterm elections. Anyway, we've been talking about international stuff, but we're talking about women's issues in sort of in reference to the Emma Watson speech at the UN, and Phaedra, you were making a point about your activities, and I will respond to that by saying, no, in fact, I don't think about any of that kind of stuff.
No, I bet you don't.
When I'm walking around. I will say, if I see a group of men approaching me, it's only men, especially if they're between the ages of 17 and 23. Oh, it's overly specific, but you know what I'm saying. Young men who are appreciably younger than me, if there's 3 or more, I will walk to the other side of the street. I will, if it's dark out or whatever, because I've watched too many police procedurals to trust packs of dudes. And even I've never been jumped ever. Not one time in Des Moines. I personally have never been jumped. I've never been assaulted that way. But I will. But if it's a lone guy looking shifty, like you said, I won't give him a second thought. And And what I remember a conversation I had with an old boss of mine who I was making these really impassioned young male feminist things that all young males of conscience will say when talking about feminist issues, saying, it's a male, assault against women's a male problem, and men should be dealing with it, and because the women shouldn't feel like victims, and you shouldn't have to go out and take self-defense classes just to be a normal person in society. That's bullcrap, and we shouldn't have it.
Well, all of those things are true,
right? And the response was, and she had daughters, right? She said, Blake, you're absolutely right. I 100% agree with you, but I'm not going to let my daughters be raped and murdered on a principle. And that's the sad reality of the situation. We hear all of this talk from the well-spoken idiot men. And I say idiot men because they're always, why are guys the people that seem to think their opinion about how a woman shouldn't be a victim is the most important opinion in the room? I've never understood that. Well, at least male media members don't go so far as to say she was asking for it most of the time.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Which that's the terrible thing, incidentally. As surprise disclosure day, as a victim of sexual assault myself, I can tell you with 100% certainty that whole "she was asking for it" thing is absolute crap. No woman anywhere is asking for
Ever.
it. Doesn't matter what happens. So to hear that kind of argument, to hear somebody, she must have been asking for it. Well, you're out late at night. You must have been asking for it. You're wearing a short skirt. You must have been asking for it.
What could you think would happen?
Yeah. What did you think would happen when you?
Well, and you hear, and if we're going to talk about it in a political context, you hear that same sort of thing being perpetuated even in terms of racial assault. So Trayvon Martin, you heard that. He deserved it.
Yeah.
Michael Brown, he deserved it. Now,
yeah.
I'm not...
What did he think would happen?
You're
walking towards a police officer with hands in pockets, or, or making the horrible crime of being a youth of color.
Right.
Apparently.
What? So now I'm going to equate those two things, because you hear about race issues and you hear about women's issues. You don't hear about male issues, because let's face it, men's issues have been the issues for a long time.
Is that actually the reason? Because I've been wondering why men don't apparently have any issues.
Well, it's hard to have a lot of issues that are taken that not taken seriously. I shouldn't say that. It's hard to have issues when, if we don't like something, we can just make it just go away.
That's fair.
Honestly,
okay.
That's when you've had all of the power and all of the money for a long, long time, and it's only now starting to finally get a little bit better, more distributed equally. Well, not equally, but distributed a little bit more fairly to other factions of society. If we didn't want, and this is a tough thing to say, but if we didn't want violence in our culture, as and I shouldn't make this a gender thing, but as men who are in power, we could do that. We could make that really, really difficult to pull off with lots and lots of security. That's a whole different conversation, but that's possible. But it should strike us all as a little troubling that you can, in this state and in most states, can go to prison for a longer period of time for breaking into a house and doing something violent, but like committing an assault, which is bad, right? Than you would for sexual assault against somebody in this state. A sexual assault does not carry the same kind of penalty that a first-degree burglary. So if I broke into a home and beat somebody up or flashed a gun or whatever, I could be facing potentially an A felony in the state of Iowa.
Okay.
A sexual assault almost is never that serious, depending on what happens. Almost never. It's often the component of that crime, which is bad, but you're not charging that crime. That's the thing that enhances it to the higher level. That should trouble everybody. If we really wanted to be serious about sexual assault, that's an area where we could improve on. Although that's easy to say, and it's long been demonstrated that there isn't a heavy causal link between penalties of crimes and the reduction in crime itself. But I don't, that's a long-winded avoidance of the answer. I don't know why specifically men don't seem to have issues, but Okay, so what's other than assault, which really is a human issue. We want to prevent assaults whenever it's possible, but and I'm going to break in here. We're going to skip the last video break just to kind of reiterate. Follow us, folks, on Facebook, Twitter, DocNLefty.com. Check out our sponsors, Des Moines Anesthesia, Dr. Lee Heap. She's got a website to check her out. The campaign is coming to an end rapidly. She's running for governor on the Libertarian ticket. Phaedra Associates and Labinas Law Firm. So back into this, Phaedra. Assault is a universal thing. It's non-gendered in my opinion. I mean, sexual assault affects women disproportionately, obviously. But let's take another women's issue, healthcare.
Okay.
Well, at least that's been dubbed as a women's issue. Or,
well, I assume when you say healthcare, you're referring to specifically reproductive healthcare or
reproductive issues.
Okay. And I don't quite understand why that's only a women's issue, because last time I checked, it did require chromosomes from both sexes, biologically speaking.
Now, I'm not a scientist, but I have a feeling that you're right. But I gotta think that the reason that men have shucked that aside is basically to not give it the kind of full hearing that it needs.
Okay.
And that but also to kind of maintain, hey, we are conversant with that issue, but boy, I mean, it's still killing a baby. It's still birth control. It's still all these different things, and trying to have it both ways. There is no commensurate issue with men in that respect, because the guys that are affected by pregnancy are the guys that want to be affected by the pregnancy. The guys that don't want to be affected by the pregnancy don't have to get an abortion.
Well, that is true.
They can skip out. And as a guy that has chased people, not on child support issues, but a guy that's chased people on debts all over the country, you can disappear and never pay your debts back. You absolutely can. Now, the states usually have more resources than my little old shop, but it's possible to live completely off the grid, getting paid cash under the table, and these guys are proud of it. So, because men have had the power, they can do whatever they want. And if they don't want to address something, they don't have to. It's just not, especially with something as serious as reproductive issues. And I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one. That's a tough one to talk about from a male point of view. Not because it shouldn't be talked about from a male point of view, but we have gotten to this point in this country where any woman's issue, when that term woman's issue comes up, the conversation immediately stops, because you know what, and this is an attack on women who deal with it. It stops in the sense, you know what, the ladies are figuring that out, and they can just go off into their.
Which would be great if, we were equally represented in, Congress, for instance. That'd be really super. I'm sure that women would be happy to go over here and figure that out if we had some kind of assurance that the thing we figured out would actually come to pass. It doesn't really seem to be the case.
And that brings me, in the last 5 minutes, we were coming back to this attitude about women's issues and feminism that was brought. I saw it. It was in Time. It's an editorial written by Kathy Young, who's a contributing editor for Reason magazine. I guess it's got libertarian-leaning views. The title of her piece was, and this was from September 26th, 2014. The title of her piece was "Sorry, Emma Watson, but he for she is rotten for men." And one of the headings of one of the sections of the article is, "Until feminism recognizes discrimination against men, the movement for gender equality will be incomplete." This goes to the point you just made. People are discriminated against. Men can be discriminated against, I suppose.
Absolutely.
And it happens to men. And there are definitely certain problems with raising young boys in a traditional heteronormative culture. That there are absolute issues with that, and that should be addressed. But the tone of that headline to me suggests that feminism is completely tone deaf to the men's issues. Here she's trying to describe some of those men's issues that we couldn't come up with.
Okay,
so let's
there we
see.
go.
Let's see what we're talking about here. We're talking about men's issues, seeing her divorced father, paternal rights.
Mm-hmm.
There's a men's issue for you. The reason that's never been addressed is because the guys that want to be involved have access to be involved. The guys that don't want to be involved aren't involved. And she's talking about paternal discrimination. So if you are the single dad, you don't, or if you are the stay-at-home dad who takes care of the kids, you are not valued in society as much. That's one of the things that they're talking about.
The stay-at-home dad thing, that's an interesting topic. I read something, and I wish I could remember now where it was. It was a blog post online, and it was from somebody who's a stay-at-home dad and a blogger, saying that he really hates the concept of the stay-at-home dad and the way that he gets treated. If he takes I think he has 2 daughters, to the park, out anywhere, then invariably he will be approached by other, parents, generally mothers of other children playing at the park. Oh, so are you babysitting today? Or is it mom's day out? Like there's this assumption that he's somehow not capable of taking care of the kids by himself long term.
Right.
That obviously mom is there, so, mom is somewhere in the picture, but she's just not there right this second. So dad is, instead of being a dad, dad is babysitting.
Yep.
For instance.
And that role seems to get infantilized. And that is, and here's my take on this sort of thing. That is an absolute legitimate thing to talk about. And we shouldn't be discriminating against anybody or making light of their situation or devaluing their contribution in any way.
Right.
However, that particular issue is not comparable to the systemic de jure discrimination that women have faced in this country. We can get as incensed about that particular anecdotal sort of story,
and
as
it
we
is
want
completely anecdotal.
Yes. That's absolutely fair, and it's absolutely right to point that out and say that's. And his blog, I'm sure this person is a thoughtful person. Whatever.
Don't really know that that's the case, but go on.
Well, I don't know. I'm taking your word for it. That's fine, but. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to be annoyed by or upset about or even angry about. That's whatever. But I'm telling you, until we invent a time machine where we go back to 1921, whenever I can't remember. Oh my God, I'm so bad. Whenever the suffrage amendment was passed.
History is hard.
Yeah, go back in a time machine and reverse that whole thing so that men up until this point have had less than 100 years of the vote. We don't really get to talk about these sorts of issues as systemic evil political things that need to be corrected.
That is true.
We really don't. I'm not sitting here saying that it's not important to bring up. I'm saying it's not comparable. It's a false equivalency to say that the pay gap is the same as daddy daycare. That is exactly what I'm saying. One is more important. They're both important in their own way, but one is more important to the culture as a whole, to society as a whole. Is that a point that I would
100% agree with you on that.
All right.
Absolutely.
I feel like taking that sort of stance. I feel like I need a little bit of affirmation on, because I want to repeat for the 8th time here. I deal with that, and I deal with a lot of unmarried dads in my practice who are, and some of them drug into the DHS Child Need Assistance system because mom has a drug problem or had an abusive boyfriend problem, and so through no fault of their own or through no neglect of their own, they're pulled in to the system, and sometimes it's been my experience that dad doesn't get a fair shake from and I don't think that I have worked with one yet. In 3 years of doing this work, I don't think I've worked with one yet, a male DHS caseworker. I think they've all been women so far. And sometimes they don't. Yeah, I think that may be across the board at the office. I'm not sure about that, but they don't get a fair shake. But I deal with that. But I'm telling you, that is not harming the body polity the way that the discrimination and the subjugation of women have. We didn't get to the Republicans are people too.
If you want, it's hilarious. RepublicansArePeople2.com, or you can check out the Twitter hashtag I'm a Republican and see what people are making fun of it.
My 5-second take: the party that's about to take over power in Congress here in 2014 and take over the Senate, retain the House, and make the president even more ineffective than he's been for the last couple of years are saying that, oh man, you should feel sorry for us because we're treated like less than people. I find that a little bit laughable.
I just think they're doing crappy branding.
Well, whatever. I mean, not to toss that off, but yes, they probably are. Oh well, thank you so much for listening, everybody. Thank you to our great producer Maddie. Thank you to my special guest host of council, Phaedra Strohmaier, for filling in for Doc today. Doc, we love and miss you. We can't wait to see you back here next week. This is Lefty with Doc and Lefty. Please check out Facebook, Twitter, DocandLefty.com. And leave a comment on the Facebook page if you like what you heard. If you didn't like, especially if you didn't like what you hear and you have some comments, we really would like to hear them. You can make sure that you check out all the sponsors that I talked about throughout the show. And we will be here next week bringing you our perspectives, such as they are. Thank you and good night.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Get over here. Love both of them.